Welcome to the Office of the Leader of the Opposition press conference for September 21st, 2023. Allow me to introduce my panel. From the right, there is none other than the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament, and to his right, Mr. Elson Lowe, Economist. Today's press statement will be read in two parts, and we will begin with the statement from the Leader of the Opposition.
The Ghana Police Force has been politicized and operates in a very unprofessional way. The opposition does not condone illegalities, but at the same time, we will not allow the politically motivated police force to act in a very biased and unprofessional way. This week, a GCOM registration clerk appeared before the court to answer a charge of forgery in connection with the production of a national identification card. She pleaded not guilty and was subsequently placed on a $100,000 bail and asked to lodge her passport at the Georgetown Magistrate Court. We in the opposition must now ask the Guyana Police Force and GCOM what progress has been made since we reported dozens of cases of forgery of election documents and voter impersonation to the police in the run-up to the last local government election in June 2023. In April, we discovered and reported cases of fake signatures on candidate forms, where one and the same PPP agent signed for every nominator. In addition, several residents in Region 5 made official reports at the Fort Wellington Police Station of their names being placed on the PPP list of candidates as nominators without their permission. We also formally brought these matters to the attention of GCOM. The leader of the opposition later wrote Commissioner of Police Acting Clifton Hickin, stating that, and I quote, "These acts are criminal in nature and require the intervention of the Guyana Police Force to bring those who have committed these crimes to justice," unquote. In response, the commissioner gave the assurance that his police stations had the required competence to investigate the reported allegation of forgery and voter impersonation by PPP agents. To date, the Ghana Police Force has brought no such charges. It went conveniently silent and forgetful. Evidently, Commissioner Hickin has again kowtowed to his PPP political puppeteers. Likewise, GCOM has completely turned its back on the matter, even though forgery and voter impersonation go to the core of the responsibility to conduct free, fair, and credible elections. Equality before the law demands that all those accused of a similar crime must be prosecuted similarly. But in Ghana, under the PPP and its handpicked, incompetent, and unprofessional acting commissioner, the law does not apply to PPP agents, members, and cronies. That explains why a GCOM registration clerk could be charged with forgery, while several PPP activists can avoid facing the brunt of the law. Guyanese must not accept this state of affairs. It is this level of lawlessness that had caused our society to degenerate. It must be recalled that Vice President Barra Jack Deo was accused of bribery and corruption, and the police failed to act. Former Minister Dharam Lal was accused of rape, and again, the police failed to enforce the law. The PPP has brought law and order to its nadir. We again call on the Ghana Police Force to investigate these allegations based on the evidence submitted to them. We also call on GCOM to uphold its constitutional responsibility for fair and credible elections by ensuring that the police investigate all criminal breaches of their system, and the charges are laid as is necessary.
And the second part of the statement will be read by Mr. Elson Long.
The PPP is putting our oil wealth at great risk and is disinclined to protect our national patrimony. Guyanese do not believe for 1 minute that the second vice president was unaware that ministry officials were in the process of negotiating a 211 million US reduction in the questionable expenses highlighted in Guyana's first oil audit. The vice president's history is characterized by many lies, misinformation, and inconsistencies. The vice president is known to be a control freak who does not allow people to operate based on professional competence. When the opposition met with ExxonMobil's representatives just a few days ago, Exxon representatives stated definitively that this reduction had been agreed to by the government. If Bar Jagdeo, the nation's chief oil policymaker, did not know of and agree with this outcome, how could the operator express such confidence that the matter was settled? Rather than blaming public servants for carrying out the tasks assigned to them, Jagdeo and his cabal need to come clean to the nation as to what really was going on at the Ministry of Natural Resources. As the PPP scrambles to cover its tracks, we believe that it is a good time to take stock of the extreme financial losses the PPP is exposing Guyana to by refusing to competently fulfill its audit duties. The opposition has committed to working to ensure our people get maximum benefit from our oil sector. However, we believe that there is no point talking to oil companies to get more out of the oil industry if we lose every last additional cent due to this persistent inability and unwillingness to audit. In an agreement in which we benefit from profit oil, if an agreement in which we benefit from profit oil is the one that we're focused on, it is incumbent on the government to ensure that proper audits are done. We remind the public that in 2022, we highlighted that the PPP was not even interested in auditing these companies. They allowed an audit deadline to lapse. Stabroek News echoed these remarks, citing Christopher Ram, who termed the government's attitude nonchalant. Kaichor News, on the other hand, has frequently cited opposition calls for audits to be released and the government to commit to a specific date for their completion. Throughout the latter months of 2022 and early 2023, the president, second vice president, and minister of natural resources dodged questions on Guyana's oil audits, with the government repeatedly pushing back the dates by which audits would be completed. Faced with this alarming trend, we even went as far as to call for an audit timeline to be enshrined in law, a cry which fell on deaf ears when the new Petroleum Activities Bill was passed. The PPP's attitude has so alarmed right-minded Guyanese that both Kaichor News and Stabroek News have published editorials in the last few weeks directly condemning the PPP's governance of the sector. It is time for change. As it stands, these audit deficiencies mean Guyana's oil revenue is vulnerable to remaining a trickle, even as the number of barrels pumped daily soars. We will not be able to deliver a better standard of living, better schools, better healthcare, or even economic diversification if we are not receiving the revenues we are entitled to. As the cost of living crisis persists, hundreds of nurses flee our country. Teachers and other workers are forced to fight for better wages. It is inconceivable that any caring government would rob the Guyanese people of the opportunity to access more revenues. This is just what the PPP is doing. The 107 million US dollars that Guyana will now move to claim on the basis of this audit could easily provide low-income housing for 2,000 hard-working families, or alternatively, 100,000 Guyana dollars for nearly every Guyanese household. This first audit, initiated by the coalition government, indicated 13% of costs could be questionable. Applied across the existing approved oil projects, that is more than 5 billion US. Left to the PPP's machinations, Guyanese can instead expect no more than the 3 million US pittance we were just about to receive. Rather than undermining the GRA with secret agreements, we once again call on the government to support that agency with the staffing and funding that would allow it to do its work. This is particularly urgent given Guyana's second cost oil audit is on the way, and early reports indicate no significant cost disputes. It would be quite bizarre for one audit to reveal almost 13% of bills are questionable costs, and another to reveal none. This audit must urgently be released so that it can be closely examined. We cannot allow a repeat of the chaos and potential criminality the first audit has revealed. While the GRA builds capacity, we also believe that international firms should be seriously considered for any future audits. This multi-billion-dollar issue must receive the best expert attention available worldwide. Finally, as the country moves to arbitration to reclaim 107 million US dollars in disputed costs, we want to ask who will be overseeing the country's arbitration claim. It cannot be the same man who swears he was not aware that hundreds of millions of US were being negotiated away right under his nose. We repeat, Barra Jagdeo is totally out of his depth. He was a failed president and should not be trusted to manage our oil sector. The president must remove his portfolio overseeing the oil sector and replace him with a team of competent experts, such as would be found in the Petroleum Commission that the PPP has long resisted. That would be the first step towards ensuring Guyanese receive their fair share of oil revenues.
Thank you. So at this time, I will open the floor for questions on the press statement, of course, by the raise of hand, and please state your media house. Mr. Adam Harris.
Good morning, all. This is for the Comrade leaders. Sir, you spoke about the arrest and the charge filed against this GCOM official for fraud. Is this the first instance of such a charge being laid against the GCOM official? You spoke of previous reports made against other officials, and you're saying that there seems to be a disconnect between charges committed by PPP, non-PPP activists, and assumed coalition activists. This official that was charged, is she related or linked to the party in any way possible, sir? And secondly, I'm not sure I'm aware what the charge was about. Can you explain what was the forgery, sir?
As I understand it, it is alleged that she forged documentation and gave somebody an ID card. Now, we do not support anybody forging an ID card or any form of forgery or illegality. However, if one recall that Barra Jagdeo apologized to a family who, according to the PPP, signed in support of their candidates. It turned out that the person was dead. And it exposed the fact that the People's Progressive Party was involved in forgery and general election illegalities. In Region 5 and in other regions, it was recognized that a lot of the lists in predominantly Afro-Guyanese area where the PPP wasn't finding support, that they forged the names, the signature of many people. And those persons went to the Fort Wellington police station and reported it. And the commissioner of police had reassured that the complaint should be given and that they will deal with it. It was never dealt with until now. Add to that, they brought fraudulent or trumped up charges against Sherrod Duncan, whose only crime is that he exposes them to the public. So what you see now, as far as I know, I do not know the person that was charged for the ID card. I do not know that that person has any relationship with the APNU or the AFC, but that is not the issue. The issue is, if this person committed a crime, then the person should be charged. But the question is, what happened with the many PPP persons who did worse than that, who took action that violate the laws, but you refuse to charge them? But all around you running charging people for cybercrime and all kind of garbage. It is that would have led us to the conclusion that the police is being used as a tool as the PPP. But not only is it being used as a tool to charge people, it is also being used as a tool to not charge those who are aligned to the People's Progressive Party. And that is the issue here.
Thank you.
Then, sir, this is to Mr. Lowe. Mr. Lowe, you spoke of the audit being conducted by the Ministry of Natural Resources, I think it is. And you were saying that the excuse is that no official was aware. Sir, as an auditor, what are the requirements for someone to start an audit? I am trying to find out if it was really possible that no one.
Adam, your mic is muted.
Yes, could you say the last part of your question again? Your mic was muted.
All right. No, I was asking you about the audit.
Yes.
And what are the steps taken to have an audit going? Because I would like to know if it is possible for any official to say that he or she or the group was unaware of an audit being executed. What are the requirements for an audit?
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam. So essentially what was happening is that the Ministry of Natural Resources was assisting the GRA with this audit. The GRA communicated that they did not want to continue with any further work on the audit, as they were satisfied that we should move forward with the claim or accept the international auditor, IHS Markit, what they had produced. Really, the reason that I think there's so much skepticism about the Minister of Natural Resources claim and the Vice President's claim that they didn't know anything is that they have been citing the work of auditors. They have been saying that costs have been reduced to $11 million, costs have been reduced to $3 million. So it is, I think, very, it strains the imagination that they're able to get that information, but they're not aware as to where the information is coming from. That to me makes no sense at all. At the minimum, as we have previously said, it would be extremely negligent for them to be citing those figures to the public without having done any sort of checking to see where these figures came from and as to whether or not these figures are appropriate. That's on one level. But on another level, there's a real question of criminality here and of whether the government is hiding an attempt to rob the country of 107 million US. That is extremely, extremely concerning. And so ultimately, it is at minimum that they were extremely negligent, but a serious question about criminality. There is no other way really that they could escape this scenario.
Thank you. Questions on the first statement? I see the hand of Mr. King.
Good day, everyone. My name is Kimo King with Now. I'd like to ask questions about the statement on the cost audit. Um, so on the matter of the audits taking a long time to complete, and your proposal that the timeline for an audit should be enshrined in law, the Vice President has said a few times that it is the iterative nature of the audits is what causes it to take so long. That it's not necessarily the audit process that takes so long, but after that, the back and forth between the auditors and the company to verify certain costs that may be in contention, whether to get additional documents or further explanation. So if a deadline or a shortened period for audits is enshrined in law, as proposed by you, how do you think that would affect the audit process? If auditors are being told, okay, you just have 2 or 3 months to do this and to complete this back and forth with the company, don't you think that will interfere with the auditor's ability to complete the audit properly?
Thank you very much for your question. First things first, it is surprising to hear the Vice President talk about the back and forth with the company when, according to him, any back and forth that was going on at the Ministry of Natural Resources was unauthorized in the first place. But more than that, one of the things that we've observed is that it was multiple years before we even heard anything about this IHS market audit, despite it having been submitted to the GRA. And then we heard the government push back the timeline on that audit as well as on other audits. And this is the key thing, not give any sort of specificity as to when these things must come to an end. It cannot be that the only way for an audit to come to light in Guyana and to be completed is for the newspapers to leak the audit. It must be that we have a structure in place. We have a time period in mind, whether that is 2 years, whether that is 5 years, we have a specific time period, and we have a structured process. This chaotic process where it is just anybody's guess, and you only find out about things where people actually leak the information out there, is not acceptable. And really, when you're dealing with these huge amounts, it is perfectly, I think anyone would expect that you would have a structured process with a specific time frame in mind. Now, of course, if there's some sort of a serious dispute that arises that requires an adjustment, you can approach Parliament, you can raise the issue publicly, and there can be adjustments made. But it can't be an open-ended process where audits are hidden for multiple years, and then when they do come out, it's chaos and there's a question of criminality. That, to me, is the other end of the spectrum and is totally unacceptable.
But I think we should add, it wasn't a case of being back and forth. The audit was there long, and the government deliberately did not put it in the public domain and was hiding the information. That's a fact. The next thing that we need to look at, if you had an audit, it meant that the company would have already put together the bills, etc. So if something is questioned, the back and forth shouldn't be long because you already did your financial statement. You sent it. It is now being audited to confirm whether it's correct or not. You would have had all your information at your disposal. The third point I want to make is that this is not the first audit in the world. They have had many. There must be some idea as to how long an audit should take. And you can put in law a time that is like the average time across the globe. So Barrett Jack Dew, in my opinion, is just one of these nefarious characters who find explanation for every ill they are performing and for every act they seek to conceal as it relates to the oil sector.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And your comment, Mr. Law, about the question of criminality with respect to the audit, it does raise a lot of questions, the ministry's recent statement on what has happened. Have you been able to be apprised by the government on how the matter was handled, specifically the disciplinary action that's been taken and whether it's appropriate?
As I understand it, there hasn't been any significant disciplinary action. But what we don't want to happen is the government to throw public servants under the bus in an attempt to move the blame or to shift the blame from them. As we said in the statement, the operator said definitively to us that the matter is settled. Now, I don't know how they could say definitively to us that the matter is settled. If they dealt with some junior employee, they would have to have dealt with people in the government at the highest level who are decision makers. So we don't want the ministry to try and dodge this situation, but we want to see, as we said, what was really going on at the Ministry of Natural Resources. In particular, you will also observe that as it concerns the way that the alarming question of criminality in this, the IHS Markit, the UK auditor, they cited that they weren't able to get information, even though requesting it several times from the operator. And now, after the GRA has said that we should proceed with the $214 million number, we're seeing information coming out. This is extremely suspicious. It is reminiscent of Sugate, where you've got, as Jagdio was saying, he provides assistance to his friends. This is very alarming, and we need to see, as we said, what happened at the Ministry of Natural Resources. And what we don't believe is that public servants should be blamed when this matter was dealt with at a much higher level than that.
It should also be pointed out, and the journalists would know, there is no freedom to operate in these ministries under the People's Progressive Party. People are even afraid to talk. Why then will we accept that some public servant acted on their own when they know for sure that they will face real problems? You are operating in a society that is authoritarian in nature. We've shown you in the previous thing how the police is compelled to let PPP people go free, but charge anybody else. Why you believe in some areas critical as the oil sector, they would be given the freedom to do anything without the vice president knowing? So it is far-fetched. And the reality is the People's Progressive Party's agenda as it relates to oil is not to operate in the interest of the people. It is to operate in others' interests, including their own personal interests. And those factors will be considered when we are dealing with these issues. Like we said in the press statement, Barjagdo is a control freak. And I don't see anybody escaping that control and doing what they allege they would have done. This is just an attempt to throw the staff under the bus.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Norton, if it is that it's not a public servant to blame, and it is somebody in the leadership of the PPP government, then why then would the government reverse that move and decide, okay, we do stand with the GRA to dispute these costs?
Because they're exposed. Because they have been exposed. If they weren't exposed, they would have gone ahead the way they are going, but they are now exposed. And that they are exposed, they now have to cover their tracks. And what they do is choose to beat up on the weakest in the chain.
Yeah, in fact, I believe that Stavro News in one of the recent editorials said that were it not for them publishing that the GRA had already signed off on this 214 million number, they don't believe that the government would have reversed course. So essentially, as the leader is saying, that's what's going on.
Thank you. Questions on the press statement? All right. It seems there are no other questions on the press statement. I will open the floor for any other questions. Mr. Shabral.
Okay, may I?
Mr. Shabral hand is up.
Good morning, sir. Can you say, first of all,
Mr. Dennis Shabral, we're having an issue with your mic. It's making lots of background sounds. You can unmute and try again.
are you hearing me?
You're much better now.
Yes, I'm asking, first of all, can you say, who will be all members of your delegation? At the meeting will come with which are things and what are some of the areas that will be discussed there? And secondly, do you believe that, we should forward Mr. Siragat should be asked to resign or step down, given the fact that this is the second time that that he's found himself in really hot water? As it relates to assault, in this case, the second time with his wife. Allegedly.
Okay, we are still finalizing all of our positions that we will take at the conference. We know for sure that we are going to give a correct assessment of the political and economic situation in Guyana generally, and we will outline and support the case for discrimination, that the government discriminates a lot. As it relates to the CRAM question, let me say this. One, the opposition does not condone violence of any kind. Worse, so domestic violence. We are a party in which there are a lot of women, and we oppose vehemently any attempt whatsoever to embarrass, assault, or do anything to women. I want to make that clear. As it relates to the resignation, I think Daniel Siram understands the nature of what has happened. It is true that it is not the first time, and I will leave it to him to do the decent thing.
If he doesn't, what will you do?
Then it's a matter for us to address at the level of the party.
And concerning the visit to the United States, Mr. Norton, how do you weigh the fact that you and your team will be going to meet the congressman with the need for Guyana to settle its own problems internally? I recall in the height of the 2020 elections controversy, there had been concerns by the then incumbent government in the DFC that there was foreign intervention in that part of the map. How do you rationalize
That they what? I didn't hear that. They were what?
foreign intervention
What
in the electoral process? How do you
Foreign
rationalize it?
Foreign intervention in the election process.
I'm not so sure I got the question clear. You want to restate the question?
And please check the sound.
Your
Mr.
mic is.
Shabral, we're having a lot of feedback from your mic, and there's a lot of noise in the background, so we're having a problem there.
How do you rationalize going to meet the congressman to raise concerns about Guyana with the fact that you would also raise concerns about foreign intervention in the 2020 elections process?
I don't know that we raised concerns about intervention in the last election. As far as I am aware, CARICOM became involved, and the involvement was as a result of agreement between the president and then opposition leader. In that agreement, they decided to go to a recount. The recount, you know what it established with the boxes, etc. Now, as a party, one of our responsibility is to keep the entire world, national and international, updated on the situation in Guyana. that does not follow that there will be intervention or you are seeking them to intervene in your affairs. What you do in this process is bring to the fore the things that are happening in Guyana. Then the US government, they have their interests, they have their principles, they have their philosophy. They will act in keeping with that. Where there is a confluence of interests, you're likely to get support. Where there isn't, then you will have to do your work to convince them that it is heading in the right direction. Intervention, to me, has a different connotation. You can have the right to raise a matter, and that doesn't mean you seek intervention. We are united on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. We will raise it with every country that we can get support from, and we will get support from them. Does that constitute intervention? You are dealing in an interconnected, interdependent world where there is no gap now or significant difference between local and international politics. And it is the right of any political party, any country, to mobilize support for their cause, both at home and abroad. And the mere fact of mobilizing support in itself is not intervention. Intervention is where a foreign government intervenes to determine the outcome of something. Election might only be one element, but there are other areas.
Board members of the nation.
What's that?
He's asking what is the
Member
member
of the
of the
delegation.
delegation.
We will, before we leave, we will issue a press release with with all the members of the delegation.
Thank you. Ms. Marshall?
Hi, good morning. Cleveland Marshall from Thurs. Just a follow-up to my colleague's question on the regional chairman. Sorry, Ms. Norton, you said that you would leave it up to the regional chairman to do the right thing, and if not, it would attract the attention of the central committee. But why leave it up to him? I think this incident happened, allegedly took place more than 2 weeks ago, or within a week, and clearly he has not stepped down. Is the party prepared to outright say, we need him to step down, given the seriousness of the allegations, as it would have called for other politicians in the PDP to step down when serious allegations face them?
We think he should step down. But I'm saying to you at this stage, we have not said to him, look, you need to go. You must understand the regional system. When somebody becomes a regional chairman or a councillor, there is no mechanism that exists to remove that person. It's something that I think people don't recognize. If today or tomorrow he says he's not stepping down, and we say you have to go, does it follow that he will go? It doesn't follow. Unfortunately, this regional system we have developed has no mechanism for recall. And so I do not think it is a wise thing to go out there making a set of statements, knowing full well the nature. If it was Parliament and the party decided, yes, we will recall the person, the law in Parliament provides for us to get our members, etc., and express no confidence, and the representative of the list can move in. There is no such provision at the regional level.
At the level of the Central Executive Committee, which I think he's a member of, is the party going to have the disciplinary committee look into it to have him removed?
The party will address the matter at the level of the Central Executive, but I do not want to pronounce that. Based on our constitution, it provides for us to place before a disciplinary committee anybody who is in violation of the law, etc. I can say to you, last night at the Central Executive, we did approve a disciplinary committee because we did not establish one since I am leader of the party. But last night we did put in place a committee. So wherever it leads, the action will be taken.
Sir, go ahead.
No, Mr. Shabral, Mr. Shabral, you can't just intervene like that. Just hold for me. Let Ms. Marshall finish. And there is someone else who has been waiting for a while with their hand up.
But I think I heard Shabral said I am the one that co-opted him. As far as I know, he was co-opted by the Central Executive Committee. I might have nominated him.
Ms. Marshall, were you finished?
I was finished on that topic. I don't know if Mr. Shabral wanted to follow up on that particular issue. I was going to move on to the next question.
I think you can go ahead and move on because I have somebody else who has been waiting with their hand up for a while.
Ms. Norton, you said the Central Executive Committee met last night. Could you say if the issue in regards to Congress came up? I know that in an interview with News Source, you said the Congress, the delegates, Congress will likely be held next year. Other party execs would have said that you have no such authority to dictate that. Could you say if any decision has been made with respect to date or timeline for the holding of delegates Congress?
Let me say at the outset that our party constitution gives me the authority as leader to speak on any matter in between Central Executive and General Council. That's a fact of our constitution. I don't know who you're talking about who said that I have no authority, but let me repeat for you, the party constitution gives the leader of the party the authority to speak on any matter between CEC and General Council first. The next issue, yes, the Central Executive addressed the matter and it will go to General Council that will be held later this year, and the party's leadership and representatives of General Council will address the issue of Congress.
Thank you. Mr. King?
Sorry, I think the leader addressed my question in his response to another one. So.
Okay, no problem. Mr. Adam Harris?
On the issue of Congress, I've been reading a lot of chats back and forth and talk about delays and how Congress are statutorily due every 2 years. How accurate is the statement that Congresses are statutorily due every 2 years? And secondly, you have been referred to as a dictator. I don't know how that was arrived at. Would you accept that label, sir?
Let me say that history of the party will tell you, particularly when we were in opposition. In 2009, we had Congress. The next one was held in 2012. I should go back. 1994, we had a Congress. The next one was held in 1997. The next one was, that is 3 years. The next one was held in 2000, which is 3 years. And if you go through, you would see a number of times the Congress took at least 3 years before they were convened. The Constitution does say biennial, but the party has always exercised the flexibility for a number of reasons to ensure that the Congress is held. But there are many occasions on which it wasn't held exactly on the biennium, including the last one which COVID postponed. And so the party's general council, the party's central executive can determine when the Congress is held once there are difficulties in meeting the 2 years. And there was no point in time in which it was exact 2 years. Some of the people you see talking in that blog are not members of the party. I've seen them comment. I didn't respond to them because I know they are not members of the party and they are bent on creating mischief. So I would tend to ignore them. On the comment that I am a dictator, I wouldn't even dignify it with a response. I can say to you, our party has always been a democratic party. I can say to you that I consult with people in the party. In a party, you will find a situation where people don't always agree. And that is a fact. But unlike what people are saying, we have had in my period as leader, more central executives meetings than the 2 years before. And I'm not here condemning anybody or saying it was undemocratic. When you were in government, there were a lot of pressing things and there were times when you didn't meet. But I'm saying to you, we have had more, the law says once per month, and we have had more than one general council, central exec for a month. Additionally, as leader of the party, one of the things I did implement is that on policy issues, we can hold a separate general council. Long before local government, we had a number of serious discussions on local government. Of course, again, people don't always agree. Some felt we should not have gone to the election. Some felt we should go. As leader, having looked at the history of elections, etc., I felt that we must of necessity go into the local government election. We went into the local government election. We made it very clear that we will focus on our strongholds and constituencies we think we can make inroads into, which we did, and we saw increased votes in non-traditional areas, and we held our ground in our strongholds, even with the PPP misuse of state resources to win those elections. I can say to you, at the level of the secretariat, any staff member stops me, talk to me anywhere, I engage at everybody here. Anybody can come into my office from the party leadership, discuss issues. I don't know that those are the hallmark of a dictator. I will say this without fear of contradiction. I've held endless press conferences, both as party leader and leader of the opposition, which to me could never be a sign of a dictator. So I won't bother with people who are saying Aubrey Norton is a dictator. I know people who oppose me becoming leader of the party. And the day after I would have won, they were criticizing and going on. It's part of the politics. There are those out there who are not members of the party, who have their own agenda, and they will push certain things. I am confident our party people understand politics, and we will move forward and not worry with them.
Thank you. Ms. Marsha?
On the issue of Congress again, Mr. Norton, in the lead up to the 2021 Congress, you had spoken about the importance of keeping that delegates Congress on time within that 2021 period. In fact, you said there were persons who were attempting to use COVID as an excuse to delay the Congress and push it beyond 2021. How now do you justify announcing in a sense that Congress will be held in 2024, almost, well, 6 to 8 months later?
Could I say this to you? I don't know that the statements you made about me are correct, but I'll put everything in perspective. We had COVID. Congress was held in 2019. Sorry, in 2018. When it was due in 2020, you had a situation where some were saying no to Congress. Once COVID went, I recall saying Congress should be held. I don't know that I said anything but on time, because it will be a impossibility for me to say on time when at the time that we were talking about, it was already past the biennium because of COVID. So there seems to be an inconsistency or an absence of logic in your pronouncement before the question. What I did say was that, and I know a fact about this, when the idea came that it should not be held in 2021, the party central executive agreed that it would be put to the then returning officer, who was Vincent Alexander, and the party, they would have determined whether it could be held or not, and it was determined that it could be held. So some of the statements you are making, I don't know, can be truthfully attributed to me. I could not have said it should be held on time every time, because the period we are talking about was already past the biennium, and there's an absence of logic in that statement that prefaced the question.
Thank you. I will take one other question before we wrap up today's press conference.
That I just verified. I have the report in here, and it says, I'm quoting you, you must have a Congress before 2021.
That is on time and in time. The conference was due. I mean, you're only exposing the limitation. We had a Congress in 2018. COVID began, and it could not be held in 2022. 2022 went out. Sorry, 2020 went out. We then were looking at a Congress in 2021, and we were looking at December, and all you were talking about came, I think, after August, which 3 years had gone. So contextually, again, I think you're quoting wrongly.
Okay, but regardless, sir, I'm not quoting wrongly. I have the report in here, and I would be free to share it with you. But, sir, 8 months after, there's no COVID. There's nothing, I would say, stopping PNC from hosting Congress. What is, and you spoke to tradition, you spoke to hosting it in August. I'm saying, sir, what justifies, okay, COVID was
Could you stop saying that I said in August? I did say that traditionally Congresses were held either in the Easter period or in August. At no stage did I say Congress will be held in August or it will be held in Easter period. That is a fact. Now, I just said to you, the party's central executive decided last evening that the matter will be placed to the General Council and it will be determined by Gen, because it has nothing to do with me. It now has to do with the party organs.
Thank you. Mr. King?
Hello, I just wanted to ask a question about who are the advisors and or consultants that help to shape the opposition's policies when it comes to the management of the oil and gas sector? And who are the MPs that take point on this issue? I would mention that the vice president has said sometimes that the opposition, in how it response to oil and gas matters is reactionary instead of having a core of policies that it stands on and that guides how it speaks on the sector. So can you talk to who the people are that guide the policy?
First, let me say this. As incompetent as Jack Doe is, he shouldn't be asking any question. But let me say to you, we have an advisory group. And over the period, if you go back to our press conferences, we have outlined clear ideas on the oil sector, including what we talk about today, timelines for audit. To quote the vice president is really to quote an incompetent, failed president, a man who has wasted the resources of this country on fiber optic cable, on Skeldon factory, a man who is accused of bribery and corruption, a man who clearly wanted to hide the audit, a man who clearly is not pursuing an approach that will allow the people of Guyana to benefit. If that is the person that is talking, he has no moral right to speak. He is incompetent. His character is questionable. Now, as it relates to our policy advisors, we will not say in this public domain who our policy advisors are. You're dealing with a very vindictive government. And the minute you call one name, they will go after the person. We are not in a democratic society. We are in a society where the police is being used against people even though they have committed no crime. We are in a society in which workers are being coerced to adopt PPP positions. We are in a society in which oil resources are being used to enrich the friends, families, and favorites. We have people with us who do not want the government to know that they are with us and advising us. And so I'm very sorry, but I'm not going to say in the public domain who are the people that are advising us. What I can urge you to do is check our pronouncement, check our positions, and you will see a consistency of policies. And that is indicative of the fact that we are meeting and discussing. The point persons, as I understand it, on oil and gas in the parliament are: one, David Patterson; two, Sherwin Holder; I think three, Ricky Ramsarup is also involved. But what we do is try to get everybody to understand the issues of oil and gas so anybody can stand on their own.
Thank you.
Respectfully, Mr. Norton, you are just as accountable to the people as the government is, and so you should say who your advisors are if they are helping to guide the opposition's policies on oil and gas. Is it enough for you to say, oh, we're scared that the government will victimize these people, so we don't want to say what their names are?
It's also the responsibility of me as leader to protect the people who are helping us. And so I have a responsibility to those people. And some of them, when they agree to help, they agree with the proviso that they will not be exposed. And so while I acknowledge a responsibility, when we are reporting on oil and gas, you are getting an opportunity to understand the advice we are getting. But I believe we have no obligation to tell the world, especially in the nature of this society, who are our advisors. It's like asking us what next we will do. They will prepare for it. If we say who are our advisors, some of them will go to the company. We have had cases where workers in private companies when it was recognized that they were helping the PNC, the People's Progressive Party went to those private companies and ensured the persons were fired. I'm not talking hearsay. I'm dealing with fact. And I repeat, we will not say who are our policy advisors. When we made the proposal for containerized, ISO containerized gas, we didn't say who was the person's advisors. We didn't. We brought before the public our position on it. We discussed it thoroughly. And I was glad in the last meeting, ExxonMobil seemed to have looked at it and believed that there's a place for it, though not necessarily replacing the pipeline, but for export, etc., as you go along. So I think we have been having some policy advice, and I am still waiting for a criticism from the vice president based on proper fact. You're dealing with somebody who doesn't criticize policy. He attacks people. He's disparaging about people. And so I don't know that Satan, who are advisors, will help.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I want to thank all of our media personnel today for joining, and those of you who are joining us on our social media platforms. Do have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us.